Hong Kong, a familiar place in another time. Mercenaries were coming from the west, told of my disappearance by a man, a betrayer who worked for my father. I had become a commodity that would be redeemed for cash.
Fear Effect is your quintessential PlayStation 1 hidden gem. Almost nobody talks about this game whatsoever. Back during the end of the original PlayStation's life cycle, gamers have been treated to some seriously outstanding games. I mean, think about it. Everything from Final Fantasy VII and VIII to the Resident Evil trilogy to just so much more. It was when we had a seismic shift from the SNES to the PlayStation. Games weren't for children anymore, but for everybody. We had cinematic masterpieces like Metal Gear Solid. We had platformers like Klonoa. Hell, we had Lara Croft and Jill Valentine. You know, there really was something there for everybody. But the downside to this was the fact that the PlayStation 1 library was just jam-packed with so many awesome games, and also more crap than you could ever imagine. So it's pretty remarkable that Kronos Digital Entertainment, who is known for making absolutely nothing, just made a game like this that got a lot of people talking. It was really unique, and why it was so unique was the fact that it featured looped animated backgrounds. And it's actually the reason why the game spans 4 discs. It's not a 200-hour game, but it actually streams the data from the disc, which was actually pretty revolutionary for a game released in 2000. It did use some pre-rendered backgrounds, but it was mainly this looped animation that really made this game feel just so unique, because it wasn't just backgrounds we're talking about here. It was everything. It could be like little bugs flying around, lights, things like that, and it made it feel just so unique. The narrative is also amazing. The game features 3 anti-heroes, Hannah, Glass, and Deck. They're all in this for a big bag of cash, and the only way you could score this money was to return Wei Ming Lam to her father. And that sounds pretty simple and generic, right? Well, the thing is, you're not the only one who's looking for Wei Ming. And after you play through the first of the 4 discs, things take a very supernatural twist, which I'm not gonna spoil. But all I want to say is, before you know it, basically the entire world rests on the shoulders of these 3 unsuspecting heroes. And it's brilliant how it all comes together, and I gotta tell you, it really holds up really well because of extremely strong voice acting and dialogue. During the course of the game, you take charge of all 3 protagonists. At the onset, you might play as Hannah, but then something happens to her and you have to switch to Glass and sort of continue the story, finding out, well, what the hell happened to Hannah. And this continues throughout the game, and what's great is that you get to know sort of the little nuances of each of the 3 characters, and I really like that, because it all sort of comes together to make this really interesting story, but also to flesh out these characters. Also really enjoyed the logical puzzles. For its time of its release, Fear Effect was extremely impressive for featuring puzzles wrapped around logic. Think back to Resident Evil. Never really made sense, right? You're in a police station and you have to find emblems and stuff to open up doors. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Here, your puzzles are all wrapped around real situations. So for example, you might be trying to break into a certain area and has an electrified floor. But because there is a power surge, the floor is basically going on and off in a certain pattern. There's your puzzle. How can you make your way from one section of the floor to the next without dying? And there you go. But there's so many other examples. I just wanted to give you guys something simple. Also really enjoyed the overall world. It's got a nice cyberpunk flair to it with the animated backgrounds and the anime-inspired graphics. Plus the good voice acting, it all comes together to make the game feel like Blade Runners come to life in sort of a video game anime form. And yeah, of course, it's going to look a little bit dated today and features a lot of pixels, But for a game released in 2000, this was really impressive. And like I said, it turned a lot of heads back then. There's obviously going to be some elements that just haven't aged quite as well, and that's got to be the tank controls. Now, I know a lot of you guys don't like those controls. For me, it takes about 20 minutes and I'm perfectly good. I'm used to them. But if you've never been used to these controls, they do take a long time to get used to. Thankfully, you do have a duck and roll move, a quick 180 turn, you can cycle through your weapons with the square and circle buttons, and you've got an action button and a fire button. But I'm telling you, if you're used to full analog controls, those tank controls can make or break the experience for you. Unfortunately, there's also a little bit of pacing issues I find with the game because it is extremely difficult. So action elements turn more like trial and error than anything else, and some of the puzzles go on for a little bit too long, especially if you didn't pay attention to some of the clues. You might be stuck for a while. But hands down, the worst feature of Fear Effect is the loading. And it's not that it's long, it's the fact that you're going to see the load screen all the time because of just how difficult the game is, and there are no checkpoints in the game. So you basically go from save spot 1 to save spot 2, die any time in between that, and bam, you're reloading and having to play it all over again. Fear Effect holds up incredibly well in some elements and not so much in others. Since this is not available on the PlayStation Store, at least not here in North America, the only way to relive this classic is to hunt down a disc copy for the PlayStation 1, and I really recommend you do that if you're okay with the tank controls, because there really hasn't been many games like this released since the original 2 Fear Effect games. So if you want more information, be sure to check out the full written review at projectcoe.com.
Go, go, go!
Do